In this video, I'm going to talk you through how to process the data that you will acquire from the labN experiment. The labN experiment involves the reaction of crystal violet with sodium hydroxide in a solution so as to determine the order of the reaction with respect to the crystal violet. This lab involves a spectrophotometric determination of the crystal violet concentration based on its colored absorbance. I am preparing this video with a focus to using Excel and Word in Office 365. In contrast to the version of Excel that's on the desktop, there are slightly different commands to complete the data processing. I'm assuming that you have already been able to transfer your data from the LabQuest to the memory stick and then import the data from the memory stick onto your computer or a college computer and now have it in Office 365 Excel as these three columns. We're interested in the column that includes the time data in seconds and the absorbance data. We do not need the percent transmittance data, so we can essentially delete this column. So I'm going to select this column, right-click on it, and delete this particular sheet. Okay, so here's the data that I actually need to do subsequent data processing. Now the idea is that we are going to want to change the absorbance into concentration. We'll want to make a plot of concentration of the crystal violet as a function of time. We'll also want to make plots of ln of concentration of crystal violet as a function of time and 1 over the concentration of crystal violet. It will be helpful to have titles for each of your columns. In the interest of time, I've already prepared that, so I'll just open this up right now. So here are the sort of titles that you may wish to be writing in. I won't see these titles in your final report, so it's up to you how you want to write these. But you can see I have concentration, ln of concentration, and 1 over concentration. And the units there are molar to the -1. Note that anytime that we take a ln function of some number or concentration, the units disappear. So let's proceed first of all with converting absorbance into concentration. I'm going to click in the cell right next to the 0.2 absorbance, and I'm going to start by typing in equals. I think you'll find, even though Office 365 has different ways of processing commands, a good way to start is always to still click the equals. You're not going to see the same thing show up as in the desktop version, but I click the equals, and now I can write a formula. And essentially, to convert the absorbance into concentration, I want to divide by the molar absorptivity. And the value for the molar absorptivity is 77000. And so I first of all select this cell of the absorbance and then 77000 and enter, and that changes my value. The final units for this will be in molar. I now want to apply the same calculation to the rest of the absorbance values. So I shall drag down, release, and now that calculation has been done. To do the conversion of concentration to ln of concentration, I am once again going to start with the equals just to kind of be consistent, but now I want to use this function button. In the desktop version of Excel, you're actually presented with some options, but you need to, in this case, click the function. We have some commonly used functions. You may need to look, however, a little deeper under Math and Trig, and what we're looking for is the ln function. So I scroll, oh, there it is. Select that, OK. And now it's prompting me to choose something to apply the long function. Well, I want to apply it to this concentration right next door. So I click on that and then enter. Now that function has been applied to the concentration. I will drag the data down this way, and the same calculation will be done to all of the concentrations. Next, I want to do 1 over the concentration. Again, I will type equals, I will type 1 / to say divide by. Again, choose not ln concentration, but concentration. Enter. Now that calculation has been done. Find the crosshairs at the edge, drag down, release, and now the calculation has been applied. So now all of our calculations are completed that are required in order to make our necessary graphs. The first graph that we want to make is concentration as a function of time. The way Excel sets it up is it's helpful to have your x-axis first, and then you're selecting your y-axis. So I'm going to start with my A8 cell, which is where the 0 time is, and I'm going to select all of this data. Now, at least in terms of a PC, I'm going to hold the Control button and now select the rest of this data. No doubt there is a way to do that on the Mac. Perhaps it's the command function. I am now going to insert a scattered plot. So I click Insert, and now I'm going to look for the different kinds of plots. Down here is my scatter plot. I want a scatter plot without lines, so I select that, and the plot is made pretty swiftly. There we go. So I'm just going to drag this plot over to the side because I have 2 more plots to make. There we go. The next plot is again x-axis time, but the y-axis is ln of concentration. Holding the Control button down, I select this. Now I go Insert, select my scattered plot without any lines, and the plot is made. So by the way, we are making these 3 plots so that we can determine what the order of the reaction is. Recall that, for instance, if concentration as a function of time gives you a straight line, it would be 0 order. If ln of concentration gives you a straight line, it would be 1st order. Well, we can see so far none of these plots give a straight line. Let's hope the next one does. So now I select my time, hold down on the Control function, select 1 over concentration. Now Insert, scattered plot. There's my scatter plot choice. Phew. This indeed is a straight line. Now, I am showing all of this so that you can see how to go about doing your data processing. Your results may be the same or may be different than what I see here. Now that you've made your 3 plots, you will need to process them into high quality, published-like sort of plots. The process is described in your lab manual, but I'm also sharing it with you here. There are a number of steps to do. Now, Excel always has more than one way to do these steps, so I'm going to show you one approach that's consistent with using Office 365. For one, we don't want a chart title at the top of the page, so I selected that and then just deleted it. The next thing is I'm going to select my graph and then click the chart button at the top here. This allows me to do a bunch of different things. For instance, I want to remove all the grid lines. So I'm going to look here and I see, oh, grid lines, great. Primary horizontal grid lines, none. I don't want any of those. So they have been removed. I am now going to look for my grid lines again. So over here, there they are, grid lines. And primary vertical, none. So now I have removed my grid lines. By the way, I've just chosen to use this plot. I could be processing any one of the plots. You'll need to do all of them. I don't need the series button, so I'll get rid of that. All right, so I've gotten rid of my grid lines. I do need to do a number of other things. For instance, I need to put titles on my axes. Oh, great. With chart selected, I see axis title. So now let's put a title for our primary horizontal axis. So let's select this, and now I'm prompted to type in something. So I'm going to type in time, and then bracket second. Okay, so don't forget the units where applicable. I am now going to select axis titles again and choose the vertical title. And this time I would like it rotated in the sense that it's going to be running parallel, if you will, the y-axis. Okay, now in this case, it's 1 over the crystal violet concentration, so slash the crystal violet concentration. So we can abbreviate crystal violet as CV plus end of concentration bracket. Now, unfortunately, in Office 365, we're not able to apply a superscript on the plus. We will need to put our units. So it'll be 1 over slash molar. Okay, and then click OK. And then we can see we have our axis title here. We need to put grid lines on our axes. So to do that, with the chart selected, we're going to click Format. When we click Format, a new window should open on the right-hand side. And I'm going to first of all select the horizontal axes. And I'd like to put major tick marks. And I don't really care if you put them inside or outside, but be consistent for both the X and the Y axes. So let's put major type on the inside. And you'll see that that's actually already been applied. All right, so that was the horizontal axes. For vertical axes, I'm also going to put major type. I'm going to put them on the inside. Pardon me, that I just clicked outside. On the inside. And now they have been applied. So that's great. We've got a lot of the graph already processed. The last thing that we need to do is to put a trend line. So now I'm going to select that data. And what that actually does is it automatically brings us to the series 1. So here I see trend line. I'm going to toggle switch so that now it's available to put a trend line. Click on here. And now I have some choices. So the name of this series is series 1, but there's only one set of data, so we don't really need any other name. The trend line is a linear trend line, as we can see. I want to display the equation on the chart. I'd like to display the r² value. All right, and indeed that has been shown. So you can see the r² value is equal to 1. So this means that it's a very good fit for our linear equation. Okay, so our graph is now almost completely processed. The next thing that you need to do after you finish all of your graphs is to cut and paste these graphs into Word. So I have a Word document open, so I'm going to bring it in a minute after I have copied this. So I right click, I copy. Now I'm going to bring into the front screen my Word document. Again, I'm using Office 365. Now I've written a few things. One, this figure that I'm showing you here, figure 1, this is meant to represent the title for the graph. Now I'm not going to write the title for you, but I'm going to remind you what's required. So I'm going to paste in my graph. So you'll need to do this 3 times for this part of the analysis, but actually there's a 4th graph that relates to activation energy, which I'll mention when you're doing the experiment. So we need to do a little bit more editing. Essentially, we need to remove all borders. Unfortunately, in Office 365, this outer border can't be removed. In the Excel desktop version, you can. There's a couple of ways that we can adjust it in Word. I'm going to select this picture here. And as a result, I have the option here of manually cropping out that border, but I'd like to propose a different method where I'm going to click these 3 dots and then click Format Picture. What this does is it opens up another window and then again a crop feature. I found that if you crop all the edges by a couple of pixels, let's say 3 pixels, so therefore it doesn't require you dragging anything. You just select these 3 pixels on all sides and then click away. You can see that we have removed those borders. Now this is a completely professional looking graph that has been properly formatted. You will need to write your figure title. There is a checklist that's posted in Moodle to guide you in thinking what should you include in the figure title. The checklist tells you that you need to identify the identity of the x and y variables. You need to state the purpose of making the graph. You need to identify and indicate the concentration of the reagents in the reaction. So I think you've got both the crystal violet as well as the sodium hydroxide and their concentrations at the time of the experiment. You may need to indicate the temperature as appropriate depending on the graph that you're making, and you may need to indicate the wavelength. Essentially what you're trying to do by a very good figure title is put enough information that someone who's trained in chemistry, for instance, could pretty much repeat the experiment. Remember that in the end, you're going to have 3 graphs from this labN experiment and then a 4th graph that involves the activation energy as included in your lab manual. I hope this video has helped you process your labN data, prepare your various graphs with the appropriate formatting, and also given you some confidence in working with Excel.